Hey
Hello,
Z,
hello, how are you?
I'm good. I was actually just writing down some questions really, really last minute for you.
I apologize that I came in like 2 minutes late. I hate that because I feel like time is so important and I like to respect people's time.
Yeah, it's only 2 minutes, and honestly, like I don't have too much planned today. It's Sunday. It's a chill day for me.
What do you do on your Sundays?
So I have multiple jobs. So I'm a real estate agent, and I'm also an Uber driver. And obviously, I have friends and family I hang out with. But today in particular, just this interview, I'm gonna do some video editing. I might Uber later, and just resting for the most part.
Beautiful.
How about you?
Awesome. You're a hustler.
Yeah, I try.
No, that's good. I mean, I feel like it's very rare to come across people that are putting in the work. And I admire people like you because it's hard to come across people that you talk to people and it's like they're completely comfortable with being stagnant. And that's just, of course you can learn from people like that as well, but I just feel like people who are much more who have the capability of doing like five things at once, to me, I think that's admiring.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm sure Miami is full of those people, aren't they?
Depends. It depends. I think all over the world, it's really what you're choosing to surround yourself with and who you want to listen to.
What do you do for work?
So for work, I work as a marketing specialist for a company. I do like a sort of like I run all the marketing, but I also run operations. I'm not just a marketing specialist.
Uh,
I literally work for sort of like a mom and pops company. It's a designer, it's a clothing brand.
what's the brand?
It's called Lior.
Oh,
And
okay.
actually, yeah, it's like a clothing brand that so we pretty much branch out to all like United States. We serve like business owners, so it's like a B2B. But other than that, I don't really want to like talk about them. Like let's just not even include them into this thing because it's like that's pretty. I'm just answering your question as to what I do.
Right. We have a lot to talk about. So I was writing down questions last minute. My first question was, what made you get into mental health?
Great question. So my mother, when I was 16, I think my mother really had like a mental collapse. She had a mental breakdown.
Hmm.
And at that time, obviously, when you see a parent, it's something that it's difficult to accept because you change roles. You're no longer the child. You now become the parent.
Uh,
And at that time, I had a very victim mentality, which was more
mhm.
like, why did this happen? Why did I have a mom who has like mental depression and
Uh,
why can't my mom like you just be like every other mom? Why can't she just play her role? And I realize now that it was all part of the journey. And so after I think it took me like 2016 to like when I hit 21, that's really when I started realizing like okay, this happened to you, like, but let's stop using that as an excuse. And that really was the turning point for me. Seeing my mother go through a mental breakdown was the reason why I kind of just started exploring my own mind.
has she gotten better?
Well, yes, 10 times better. I believe, I don't know if you've ever heard the law of the mirroring, like mirror, the
No,
principle of
no,
mirroring.
no.
So pretty much how that works is when you start working on yourself, when you start, and I say this because it's in my experience, it has been true. It's been true. It's something that has actually I've noticed it in my life. When I started really like taking care of my mental health, when I started exploring my psychological processing, my everything, I started really, really nurturing the relationship I had with myself. And so in physical reality, because I was nurturing the relationship I had with myself, I was able to approach my mom in such a different way. I
Mhm.
saw her differently. I no longer saw her as like this depressed or person. I started seeing her as a little girl, right?
Interesting. Interesting.
I started seeing her as a little girl, and every time I would approach my mom, instead of judging her, I started seeing her as a little girl, and I started saying, okay, I know this little girl did not have parental guidance, and I started like approaching her with love. And when I approached her with love, the dynamic changed.
What were you approaching her with before?
Judgment and hatred and anger,
Resentment.
resentment, because I felt like, I just didn't understand. I always thought, like, how could you leave? Like, how could you just be someone that leaves her kids and, like, and just go and make your entire life? But she was battling her own demons. I think we get caught up on that.
Yeah, but I also wouldn't judge you for having a resentment for a mother that left you. I wouldn't judge you for that either.
Hmm.
You know, that's a very, very normal and regular feeling. So she got, was she diagnosed with anything?
She was, well, she actually attempted suicide,
I'm sorry.
and it's okay. It's fine. She attempted suicide. So that itself was an entire experience for me, because physically I was there too when I saw all of this.
Mhm.
And so that was at that point, she went, I think they took her to, like, what is it when you attempt suicide, you call the ambulance and they take you to like a, like, sort of like a mental center for a couple of days. And then I think she ended up leaving, and she never really was like diagnosed professionally by someone.
Oh, she never went to a psychiatrist or
She was
psychologist.
never, my mom's never into none of that. So now our relationship has changed because I started driving deep into consciousness and deep into like self-discovery and self-transformation. And now my mom has become so curious. Like, our conversations have become more like, tell me more about this, tell me that. So it's just interesting how life works.
How did she heal? What did she do? What were the
Well,
steps?
so here's what happened. My mother got into a relationship with someone else. And so that person, obviously, when you find someone, it's emotional support. But
Yeah.
I don't think I cannot say, like, I cannot judge or become, like, it's difficult to be in someone's shoes. All I know is that I feel like sometimes having the right people around you can get help you get through
Oh,
things.
that's everything. That's everything.
And I think that's what my mom always needed, always needed. She didn't have, she really didn't have one-on-one parental guidance, and she kind of pretty much was raised by herself.
Oh my God.
So, hmm hmm
She sounds like a survivor.
yeah, I used to tell, I used to think my mom was someone who, I'm like, how could you just quit? Like, I used to see her as a quitter, because, I was like, how could you just quit on your family? And then I realized, like, it takes courage. It takes courage to do something like that, because you have to live with that regret of what you did every single day, every
It takes
single
courage to do what?
to leave, to leave. Because I believe that the easy way out would have been like, and I wouldn't say easy completely, because trying to attempt suicide also, like, is very difficult,
Mm.
you know? But the fact that she decided to not go that route and still decide to go, okay, I'm gonna keep living, but I'm gonna go this way. I think that's a very courageous decision.
So it sounds
And
like you helped her heal. You helped her through the healing process.
I would say that me healing has allowed me to approach my mom differently. I can't help anyone heal unless they choose to heal. So it's just how you approach people will change the dynamic completely. Sometimes you can't change people. All you have to do is be present and be there with love. And that's something that I've applied in every relationship. Is it difficult? Is it difficult? Is it easy? Of course. Like, I'm sorry, is it difficult? Yeah, sometimes it's difficult. But you have to keep asking yourself, how do I want to approach people? How do I want people to approach me? If I'm going through something, you know.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had a lot of resentment for her and that you even viewed her as somewhat of a burden before, and now you've come to a much more forgiving state. And it sounds like when you forgave her and when you started to show more compassion to her, that started to help her heal her inner
Mhm.
demons. Is that correct?
I would say so. I would say so. I mean, I think curiosity is important. I think if you're someone who, like, yes, she could see that I'm doing all of this, but if she doesn't ask the questions like, hey, I see that you're doing this for yourself. Tell me more about it. Then that means she's interested in learning, you know. But if she doesn't even open, she doesn't give me, if she doesn't open the door, then I don't force that upon her. If that makes any sense.
Was
So
she? Go ahead, go ahead.
I wouldn't say that I have healed her. I would say that because I healed myself, the relationship healed between me and my mom, if that makes sense.
It sounds like you don't really want to say that you helped her heal.
Really? Why?
I don't know. That I'm wondering because it sounds to me like you played a large role in her healing. What was there? And you said there was a man,
Yeah, she's with someone right now who's
and
been with.
he helped her through the
I
process.
I honestly feel like he has been a huge influence on her and mental health, you know. So he's someone that's been with her on a, you know, lives with her every day, you know. You build a relationship with someone, you know, that person offers you emotional support. And so I would say that him and my mom ended up being perfect for each other. I really was I've always been like very secluded, you know, so I think that my relationship with my mom has healed. I don't know if I have helped her heal. I can't answer that for her, if that makes any sense. All I know is that I'm more important about like how, like I'd rather make sure that our relationship is well, you know, instead of I know my mom's alive and I'm not doing anything to try to even, you know, talk to her because I have resentment. So I would say that's exactly what happened. The relationship healed between us because I've healed myself.
From the damage that she caused.
Yes, yes.
Is there still a little bit of resentment in you, or is it gone?
No, no,
I,
gone, gone, gone. If I was, your name's Christian, right?
yeah, yeah.
Christian. Um, if you can ask me, like, if you asked this question to me like years back, I would probably like my micro expression would be like this, scrunching my face, and I would have been like, oh, like, you know, I would have been super angry. You would see it. But as you're asking me this question, I feel so calm and at peace because I'm so grateful, even though it sounds like controversial. I'm so grateful that this has happened to me because I am who I am today. I am this woman that I am today because of that.
Yeah, so, because forgiving can be a very, very long and difficult process. So, but it sounds to me like now you take everything less personally than you did before. It sounds like before you took things very, very personally. You took it as like maybe somewhat of a personal attack, and now you look at it from a more objective perspective, and you look at it from more like, oh, well, it has nothing to do with me. It's her mental state, it's her relationship with the universe and her mental health. It has nothing to do with me.
I love the word that you said, objective, because
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. I've learned to look at things, especially this dynamic, not just between my mother, but also what was the relationship between my mom and my grandma, and then my grandma with her grandma. It's like every little thing plays a huge role into someone's like mind and their development. You know, family dynamics are so important. So I've learned to not just see my mother, but also see the relationship between her and my grandma. So it's also made me approach the situation with even more compassion.
Do you have siblings?
Yes,
And what was their role in all of this?
their role, well, like be a little bit more specific as
Like,
to
did they also have resentment towards her?
oh yes, 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 yes. Especially men. You know, I have three brothers. And I think that the dynamic is the dynamic shifts because now we're talking about masculine men, you know. So the role that a mother has in a man's life is crucial. Are you close with your mom?
Yeah, yeah. She lives like 20 minutes. I try to see her at least once a week. But yeah, I love my mom. My mom, she raised me. I believe that she raised me very well. But do your siblings still have resentment towards your mom today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you're the only one that kind of transcended that resentment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And I've
like
also
I can't I also want to add that I don't fully blame them for having the resentment. Like I don't judge them for that. Like is having a peace of mind better and is forgiveness uh somewhat transcending, sure, but I don't necessarily blame them. Like if you have a parent that treated you like crap in whatever way, or left you, or was neglectful, who am I to judge you for that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So do you try to like what do you tell them? Like do you try to inspire them to forgive her? What do you tell them?
Yeah, well, actually, great question. Thank you for asking that. I learned before that if I try to approach them with like, hey, you haven't seen mom, go see mom,
It doesn't work.
works. Yeah, that never works. So I've learned that part of living with love, right? Part with practicing this feeling of living with embodying love is only let them approach me about it. Let them approach me about it. If they ask me, hey, mom, or hey, this, then that's my open door. That's my ability. And they have sometimes come in and we have such intimate conversations. Sometimes they break down and it's interesting because instead of me trying to force them onto them, they come and they ask me questions regardless. And I think that's also part of their curiosity of wanting to know more about her and stuff like that. Now, the day that they choose to make the ends with her, then that's really their journey. Like everyone has their journey, and like accepting that has been something that has been liberating for me because I can't force anyone to heal that relationship unless they choose to.
Yeah, trying to force someone to do pretty much anything is generally never a really good idea. Because what happens is, I would imagine that when you used to tell them, hey, go see mom, what would happen essentially is their ego would come out swinging. And one thing I learned about people is you you have to lower their defenses with compassion first in order to get, whatever it is, in order to get them to see mom or whatever the case, you have to lower their defenses with compassion before, otherwise their ego just comes out swinging. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So, so you said you have three brothers. Do you have any sisters?
No, I'm the only girl.
How does that feel?
I know guys, like I feel like it's something that I feel like I've always been one of the guys. So it's like, whenever actually, even when it comes to dating, sometimes I feel like I was, it's sort of like a blessing because I can see right through a man when they're talking to me and they're just like, I'm like, listen here. I'm like, I just want you to know I grew up with three brothers. Whatever you tell me, whatever you say, like, trust me, I see right through you, like I see right through you. But it's amazing because I feel like I'm very comfortable with the masculine, like because I have been in the role of like being around so much guys. So I've always been like a tomboy, and also that's also like that's the pro about it. The con here is sometimes what happens is that growing up with brothers, you always had to prove yourself. You
Hmm.
always had to prove yourself. Like
Hmm.
you can't play soccer with us because you're not good enough, or you
Yep.
can't wrestle with us because you're not good enough. Oh, get out. Like I was always excluded from the playing, the groups and all that. And so what happened was that I started realizing that was sort of programming my subconscious mind of not feeling good enough.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I realized I'm like, okay, there's moments where I feel like my masculine energy, it's like amazing because in my career or whatever, like I'm one of those people that excels, or like if I have something or I'm trying to, solve something, I'm not a give up. Like I don't give up. I'm just like, okay, let's find a way, let's find a way, let's find a way, whatever it takes. But learning now to tap into my feminine energy has been so interesting. And I am having fun now because I'm like, okay, now I have this. I know what it is to be masculine energy. Now let's get in touch with the feminine energy. So that's been interesting.
What do you mean by feminine energy? Help me understand. What is feminine energy?
Trust, trust, trust.
Trust in who?
trust in not just trust in people, trust in men, trust in women as well, trust in men, trust in women, but mainly trust in myself and trust in the process. The process. I would say that's really what I mean. It's like feminine energy to me is when you allow yourself to let go and not try to control. When you let go. And that is very difficult because you're like, I want things to go this way. Let me plan this. Let me do this way. And it's like life comes and the life sees that you're doing bump, bump, like you're putting so much effort and it gives you another challenge and another. So I've learned now that the the best way to maneuver and let life work with you is when you let go and you trust that everything is just like right now. We're here, we're having this discussion. There's a reason why we're having this discussion, right? I don't know you like that. You don't know me, but there's so much energy being like in this conversation, like collectiveness, consciousness that is going because I'm allowing and I'm going with the flow. I'm not overthinking about it too much.
Were you closed off before?
I would say that I wasn't closed off. I would say that I was someone that wanted to control all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna do this, or I'm thinking like continuously about my future.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I want everything to be perfect. Perfect.
You were controlling.
Controlling. You know what? Sometimes my dad, he's like he bugs me. He knows sometimes, your parents always like tell you, like anyone can say something, but your parents are gonna snug you right when they know your weakness. He's like, you're bossy. And I'm like, I know that. I know that I'm bossy. I'm trying to work on that. I really am.
Well, we know the root of your bossiness, right? The root of your bossiness was probably your brothers making you feel out of control,
That's beautiful. Yeah.
right? So then that
Well,
made you that made you crave control because that you probably felt very secluded, very isolated, very, left out, and then that made you want, and I would imagine that that's also a very lonely experience for a little girl.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
You probably always wanted a sister growing up.
I did. I did.
Do you have any like cousins or?
I do have cousins, but other than that, I would say that I've always been, I guess that's why sometimes, like, how I have cousins, but I wouldn't say I was very close. But I think that's one of the reasons why I'm very comfortable being by myself, being alone in my solitude.
Because you're used to it.
I'm used to it. But at
So
the same time, I wouldn't just say I'm used to it, but I've learned to see like the amazing benefits that come with being by yourself.
what are some of the benefits?
What are some of the benefits? I think that when you are by yourself, you're able to think and critical think, and also you learn to become more curious about what it is that you want, what it is that you don't want, what is it that you are striving for, or how are you living? Like I was just talking about this to myself because I ask myself questions and I'm like,
I can
I'm
tell.
right.
I can tell.
Yeah, how could you tell?
You come across as very, very self-reflective to me.
Yes.
Which are the people that don't really need too much advice because you sound like you're really good at giving your own advice to yourself.
Yeah. Actually, I had just done a video about how um I was I've always been someone that questions, and I always ask myself questions. It's like, like, okay, why did you feel this specific way about this? And like, what can you decode if you feel a feeling because of this? And so if I have a thought and I have an emotion, I link them, right? And then I try to find where it's coming from. And I've always been this way.
Me too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I think it's not a lot of people have this. I think it's a gift. It's a gift because you have to be someone that can have a thought, have a reflective moment, but then also detach yourself and not like judge yourself for it, you know? And I've always been this way. And I want to share again, like why I believe so much in the mirroring effect of how when you do things, life begins to mirror things to you, people, experiences. Because I've always been someone who questions and likes to find answers, I ended up meeting someone that just randomly, like this, I don't know exactly how I met this person, but this person was mentioned the word Mayutics, and I was like, what is that?
Udix?
And yeah, Mayutics.
Is that a
And
real word?
yeah, well, actually, I had to literally re-listen to that word on Google because I'm like, wait, is that how you say it? I wrote it down. But it's actually Socrates used this method. So back then in Greek philosophy, a lot of philosophers would impose answers. They would, I have this thought and this belief. And so, like, they would impose answers to people. And Socrates came in and believed in the power of questioning. And so when you question, you really start individuals, because I can ask you, Christian, what is this? What is that, right? You're gonna end up, I'm gonna make you think,
Hmm.
right? And you're gonna give me such a different answer if I tell you, oh, Christian, this is why you're this way. So me giving you the ability to think and reflect will actually allow you to find the answer within yourself. And he believed that the answers are already within yourself. And when I was like I want to go back to what I was saying. When I was practicing this and really, really questioning myself,
Hmm.
I met someone that mentioned this word, and I have it on my notes on my phone because I write everything on my notes. I'm like, what is Mayutics? And he's like, oh, this is a Socrates, and I still have it. And I'm like, isn't it so funny that that's how I've been approaching myself? And then the universe comes and brings me someone that tells me this. I didn't even know that this was a method.
Well, in this scenario, you do it to yourself, where in Socrates' scenario, he does it to other people.
Exactly. You in this scenario, I work as the questionnaire, but also the receiver, because I believe that if the answers are within yourself, if you ask the right questions to yourself, you can find the answers within yourself.
The
So
thing is,
me,
go ahead, go ahead.
so me being able to do this to myself has allowed me to become present with others. So when I talk to people, I do this thing where I ask people such complex questions that I'm like, they're like, why'd you ask, like, how, like, no one's ever asked this to me, and then boom, I see like their answers, and I'm like, I can finally, like, I'm finally seeing this person for who they really are. So it's also like me practicing this has allowed me to use this in my interactions with individuals.
Yeah, so the thing is, first of all, I definitely agree with your statement before that it's a gift and that not many people can do it. So what I also realized about self-reflecting and asking yourself why is very, very, very often you have to remove the ego. So for example, like why was I wrong or was I wrong? Why was I wrong? Why did I flip out on that person? Why was I not as compassionate as I could have been? Why, like a lot of people are unable to remove their own ego from the equation and they just blame the world where, so I think that, it reminds me of stoicism, stoicism.
I know a little bit, but I have never really dived into stoicism that much. Can you explain it to me? And like,
Yeah. So there are multiple. I mean, it's kind of like one of those words where they're kind of like different people will give different definitions. But the way I
mm,
define stoicism is the ability to put your emotions in the back seat. And a lot of people don't have that ability. And I would imagine that you're pretty good at that because most people who are very self-reflective have that self-control to put the emotions away. And the thing is that you have to have that to do what we're talking about because if you're not able to put your emotions and your ego away, then now you're not asking yourself why was I wrong or why did I flip out. Now it's all I'm always right. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you're angry. You're angry.
And that's one reason why there's a lot of anger now because a lot of people are confused and a lot of people just like to blame the world. And it sounds like you're good at, so I do have a question. So do you tend to put more blame on yourself or do you tend to put more blame on other people? Like what is your like default?
My default would be that I end up being someone that yes, I think I fall in the spectrum where the blaming can begin more within myself. I wouldn't say blaming, self-critical is my default. I'm very highly self-critical, because I'm very highly self-reflective, like there's that spectrum. One of the things that I've learned is that where it comes from, like learning where that comes from, why am I so self-critical, has allowed me to see myself and have compassion for myself instead of when I notice that I'm being too highly critical on myself, I have to train my mind to literally be here in my body right now and say, okay, like get back to the body, right? When the highly criticalness in me wants to come out, I do this thing where I'm like, okay, like get back to the body, like feel right now your body, feel like how you feel, like take control, like stop thinking about it, just focus on the body first, right? And then I find a reason as to why I'm grateful for today, why I'm grateful for anything. And the minute I do that, the minute I'm like, okay, I see you're going this way, train back, let's focus right now on the body because it brings me back to right now, this present moment. And then I tell myself, I'm like, okay, what is one thing that you're grateful for today? And it could be, it sounds like so funny, but sometimes I say like the most, I have like this list of what I'm so grateful for, and it's like, and it brings me back to like, just have compassion for yourself, Z. Like, just have compassion for yourself. And so that's been something, that's my way of when I start getting into that rabbit hole of criticizing myself, I come back to having compassion for myself. And like I said, it's something that you need to train continuously.
Yeah, so that training your brain and like changing the way you think, it's called cognitive reframing. And you sound really good at it. And actually, I think that our brains are actually pretty similar because I actually do the same thing. Like if I'm like feeling self-critical or whatever, I've done that before too, where I ask myself like, okay, what are you grateful for today? Or like another thing I'll ask myself is, okay, what do you have to look forward to? Like in the week, what do you have to look forward to? It's a coping mechanism, and it helps calm the brain down, and it works. It works, and it takes a lot of self-control to do that. And back to what you were saying before about how like there's here's the way that I look at it. There's what we think, and then there's what we feel. And those are two very, very different things. So, for example, there are multimillionaires who feel like a failure. That's called
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome. Or like there are models who feel unattractive. Like that's a real thing. I was watching a TED Talks with this model, and she was saying that the most insecure people she know are all models. And when I
Mm-hmm.
was a younger boy, when I was younger, I had a really, really difficult time understanding like why are these beautiful women feeling so insecure? I didn't understand as a 17-year-old boy. I didn't understand. And now I understand because, like I said, there's what we think and there's what we feel. And those are very, very different things. And like I tunnel down on that and I think about that a lot. And I think what it really comes down to is that the human brain is flawed. It's very flawed. And it's not, the human brain is not really as rational as it should be. Like why does a multimillionaire feel like a failure? A lot of it comes from childhood too. So obviously if you're growing up, constantly being secluded from things, and if you're growing up, feeling different and isolated, then you're gonna feel that way even when you're not. And I would imagine that there were times when you somewhat felt like you weren't loved when you actually were loved.
Mm-hmm.
And then go ahead, go ahead.
So I agree with what you're saying, like the human brain can be flawed, but I also feel like that's one way of looking at the brain. And I've trained my mind to always look at every, like, okay, there's one perception of this, what's the opposite perception of this? So I would believe that we have the capabilities, we're so powerful, our brain is so powerful if we learn how to optimize the brain. And the problem here isn't saying that the brain is like, like if these people feel this way, like, all right, what are you thinking? What are you doing? What are you like? How are you applying? Like, what is your lifestyle? So I believe that we have the ability to change the brain, which is neuroplasticity,
Uh,
and we can learn how to optimize the brain to an entire freaking full potential. I mean, look at right now. I mean, artificial intelligence, look at what's happening. Like this entire, like what we're living, what we're seeing, all begins with collective consciousness here. I think that I think it's really important that we also say that we have the control to really we have the control to train this to become super brain. And I'm a testimony of this because this is something that I practice. Like neuroplasticity is huge. Cognitive flexibility is
yeah,
huge for
yeah,
me.
yeah.
You
That's a great one.
yeah. And going back to, and I'm gonna keep saying this to you, Christian, because you're like, oh, why does she keep saying this? I don't even know. Can you search up like what is the mirroring, the law of principle or something? Like I forgot what how is it like I think it's the law or let me see.
The law of mirroring,
The principle of mirroring or something like that.
principle of yeah, I've never heard that. The principle of mirroring.
Or something like that. What's
Um,
the law
the
of
mirror
the
principle is simply this: whatever is happening in your internal world is reflected in your external world.
Yes, the mirror principle, you got it. Yes, the mirror principle. So when I started doing this too, which is so interesting because now I'm going to start talking about metaphysics and quantum, like the quantum field, right? Do you know any of this or no?
I know very little about the
Very
quantum.
little of this. Okay, so the what was it? The principle of mirror?
The prince, let me see, is the mirror principle.
The mirror principle. When I started learning about the brain and really started really getting into neuroplasticity, I started attracting people who were like people who have practiced linguistics, neurolinguistics. Someone that I met actually was one of the turning points too. He was someone that meditated for 10 years and then he went into like training his mind. And when I was when this is why I believe that when you start changing internally, you start attracting people that are starting to mirror everything that you're doing. This person was huge on neuroscience. This person was huge on brain optimization. And he would always tell me, like, your environment can will control this a lot. Like,
Mhm.
so I remember when I first went to his house, I was like, how could this person live this way? Like he didn't have a couch, he didn't
Really?
have like a bed, he didn't have anything. I didn't even know who I was talking to. I didn't know who I was talking to. I really did not know him like that. Turns out this man was like coaching billionaires and millionaires on brain optimization because I was working and learning about neuroplasticity, neuroscience, the universe started bringing me people like this. And that's why I'm a huge believer in the mirror principle. So he would tell me like I would observe his surroundings, and I remember like looking at his window, and he literally wrote with a Sharpie in his window, cognitive flexibility.
Mm.
And so that's something that he would always look at when he goes outside to look at, like, to like look outside. He had that word because it was repetitive to his brain. And he would always, it was like a reminder to always flex, like learn how to flex this.
So yeah, so do you know what dichotomous thinking is?
No, what is that?
Economist thinking is like people who think very, very black and white, like in very extremes, and that is the exact opposite of cognitive flexibility. The way that I interpreted cognitive flexibility is it's being able to understand the gray area and being able to, not just change the way you think and the neuroplasticity, but also the ability to say, you know, my beliefs might be wrong. Let me look into this because I might be wrong. The beliefs that I've been believing for years might be wrong. Let me listen to the other side as opposed to no, I'm right, you're wrong, which you see in politics all the time. And it sounds I'm very impressed because, it sounds to me like you came a very, very long way, and for the most part, you did it on your own. Like to me, you didn't mention the therapist, so it sounds to me like you did a lot of cognitive reframing simply on your own, which is very, very impressive.
Yes, and thank you for that. Honestly, like it's I just couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford a therapist and I couldn't I really just never had, I was just always working. So like I think to answer your question in the beginning as to like what made you dive into mental health, my
Mm.
mom was a big turning point for that because of her depression and because of her like mind, like her mindset. I also just life also kind of forced me to like learn on my own, you know, and that's why I believe that if you're a seeker, if you're a seeker and your intention is to become a better person, you're gonna be in like the universe is gonna work with you. It's gonna bring you the people. I'm so blessed, Christian, to have met so much people that even though they're not therapists, they came and they were messengers. They were the ones who like, you know, like my friend who I was telling you, he was the one that taught me brain optimization and so much other people that came into my life. And then also like I would stumble upon books. I would stumble upon like just randomly, like books would come in and like that's why I'm very also like very spiritual because I believe that if you want to become better, the universe will bring you everything without you having to look for it. So like the books came, the podcast came, like everything that I had to do in order to become the woman I am has been because of I'm a true believer of faith and I'm also very spiritual.
How do you define spiritual? What do you mean by spiritual?
Oh, it's a different question, right? Like it's a difficult question because there's like you said, everyone has a different meaning
Uh-huh.
to a
Yeah.
question like that. I think spirituality to me is when you are able to be someone that does the right thing without having to feel like, you know, you're pressured to do the right thing. Like when I'm alone, when I'm alone and I am like, let's just say for instance, when I am alone, who what comes out when I'm by myself? Like, and I touch my heart because I think about this, like what really comes in when I'm alone and like if I'm like thinking or I'm writing or I'm being like meditating or I'm just by myself, if you really tap into like believing that there's like a higher source, you get like this feeling of peace. So I think that to me, spirituality is allowing yourself to believe that there's a higher source and also being someone that has the ability to do the right thing even when no one's around. And I'll give you an example. I found myself like a couple of days at a Publix, right? There here in Florida, there's like Publix. I don't know, like in New York, there's like different supermarkets or like here it's like Publix is like a supermarket.
Mhm.
I found myself there and I had like I had a lot of food in the aisle and I see a gentleman behind like waiting and he only had one plate. And I was like, you know what, just go in front of me. Like, he's like, are you sure? And I could tell like he was very tired. He had a long day of work. I'm like, you know what, just go in front. Like, I have all this food. You go first. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm like, you go first. So that's just an example of when you are by yourself and you don't have influence around you and you see that you have the ability to do the right thing that comes from your heart. To me, I feel like you're practicing goodwill. You're being in that like you're doing things, doing the right thing without being influenced to do it. And I think that that allows me to remember like we're all connected, you know, and like if you have the ability to do the right thing, just do it.
Yeah, I forget what the quote is, but it's something like being a good person is doing the right thing when nobody's watching or something like that. I don't even remember
Oh, it's exactly that.
I don't even remember who said it, but it always stuck with me, and it's one of my favorite quotes. So you know, the back to the example when you let the guy in front of you, you know, like it's so rare. Like I can't remember the last time someone did something like that to me. So you sound like a very compassionate person.
I am because I've learned to be compassionate with myself. I feel like if you are someone who is, you have compassion begins in the self. You know, you have to be someone that has compassion for yourself in order for you to give compassion for others in that way. It's sort of like It's sort of like, have you ever heard that saying, like, you can't take care of some other people if you're not taking care of yourself?
You can't pour from an empty cup.
You can't pour from an empty cup. So my cup has been so full of love, and I'm that way. And so yeah, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good. And to go back to why I say it's spirituality, because you see a lot of people who practice religion, and I've seen it because I've been very highly criticized by some of these people. Some of them people from actually my family members who practice a specific religion, and it's like you feel so misjudged. You feel like, oh my God, like, and it's like, is this person doing the right thing, or is this person not doing the right thing? Like, it's just that's why I believe it's a matter of doing what the right thing and doing what your heart tells you to do.
Yeah, so there's a term, have you ever heard of metacognition?
I have heard of metacognition, but I can you just remember, like, tell me the definition?
It's basically thinking about the fact that you're thinking and thinking about your own thoughts and analyzing your own thoughts. And it's basically like self-awareness, essentially. And I think from what I hear, it sounds like your metacognition saved you because, you sound like you're very, very self-aware, like you're very high in metacognition, you're very self-reflective. And it sounds to me like you had a rough childhood. You had brothers who constantly excluded you. You had a mother with mental health issues, and it sounds
Mhm.
to me like your metacognition and your ability to self-reflect was your savior.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you did it on your own without a therapist, and that's definitely something to be proud of, 100%.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would say it's something to be proud of. But I feel like it's honestly, Christian, I believe like, okay, what's done is done, for future is future. I believe more like, okay, everything that I'm going through right now, am I embodying it right now, this present moment, right now, today? What am I going to do today that is going to still allow me to do things from the heart, And yeah, it's just the word proud to me sounds like it comes from the ego. Is that it's I guess my association with that word is ego. I don't know why I think of it that way.
Well, the word pride has a lot to do with ego, but I think it's 100% safe to say, I'm proud of myself, or to, when someone says I'm proud of you, which I am, I think that basically means like, I'm proud of how far you've come because
Okay.
yeah, because I noticed. I mean, one view that I have on people is that like, and you kind of said it before, that people tend to be very, not self-reflective, and I think that's really like the key to happiness and the key to life, being self-reflective. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. K is awareness precedes change. Also, he also said awareness precedes control. You have to be aware of everything, of why you do what you do, of why other people do what they do. And it sounds to me like you're very high in self-awareness and you're very aware of other people. And it sounds to me like that took you a very, very long way.
Yeah, 6 years, I would say, of deep self-discovery and being by myself has really allowed me. That's why I'm a big believer that solitude is also my savior, because I've learned to, all of this has allowed me to really become very connected with myself.
I'm getting introvert vibes.
I am actually, I was actually at a party yesterday with my family.
Uh-huh.
And, when I get dressed up and everything, like, I'm just the type of person that when I walk into a room, I like demand like presence, and I've always been that way because I feel like confidence and aurora, and how you carry yourself and how you feel about yourself is a reflection of when you encounter and you have interactions. And I'm like super lively, like I start listening to the music and I just like start dancing, and I'm like super, like, I don't care if, who's watching, I'm just gonna dance. So I could be an introvert, but I can also be such an extrovert. And then my aunt's like telling me, she's like, everyone's like looking at you, everyone's looking at you. And I'm like, oh, shit, I don't care, like, I'm just having fun. So I think I'm a combination of both, Christian. I wouldn't just say I'm introvert.
Yeah, so that's called an ambivert when you're kind of
Ambivert.
both. So, but you sound like a very confident person to me.
Yeah, I am confident. I would say like I'm confident depending in the moment, in the moment. Confidence to me, I feel like it's more like moment wise. Like there will be moments that I feel insecure, and I've learned that even moments where I feel insecure, there's power in that because I'm accepting that I'm feeling insecure instead of running away from being insecure. So, um, that to me is like, I feel like confidence to me is just it depends on the moment, because there's moments where like even before we were doing the Zoom call, I was like, oh, I was experiencing a little bit of nervousness, and I was experiencing like, and instead of like, don't feel that way, Z, or don't know, just allow yourself to feel that way, And so to me, insecurity and accepting insecurity can also lead to confidence, if that makes like it just does that make any sense?
Well, I would say that, accepting it is the first step. Accepting the fact that you're insecure is the first step to confidence, and then you can go from there. Because if you don't accept it, then you won't take the proper steps to heal or to change. And it's so funny because everybody is always so, because I've done many interviews, and everybody's always so nervous. I'm like, listen, I have 19 subscribers. What are you nervous about? You know what I'm saying?
It's your own, I remember, I feel like it's not about the person, it's about me. I've always learned to bring it back to myself, and the nervousness in my experience comes from like that feeling of like the reprogramming of my mind. Like I mentioned, one of the things is like, am I going to be good enough, or am I my information? Because I want my information, or anytime I speak to just us, like I want it to be something that is both enjoyable for the person, like people. So I think sometimes the nervousness really comes down to it, but it has nothing to do with you. It has more to do with me. Like, am I capable of doing this?
How are we on time, Z?
We're good. I have how what did you have any other questions that you want?
I had a bunch, so that's why I'm wondering
Let's
how
just
we are on
go
time.
straight to the let's just go straight to the questions then. I have time, Chess. I have time.
Okay, I was just curious because
I'm enjoying this conversation.
yeah, me too. I think that we have, our brains are very is similar because I'm very self-reflective also myself. You said something. What were we just talking about? Because I had a thought in my head. What were we just talking about?
We're talking about how insecurity leads to confidence, and then and I was talking about how like right now when I was experiencing nervousness, you were like, yeah, I do a lot of interviews with people, and they always get nervous. And then I said, well, I feel like in my experience, I get nervous because it's more like my own internal thoughts of my own subconscious feelings of not feeling like, is this going to be good enough for just the other person and stuff like that. And that's where I experienced the nervousness. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and then I said people always get nervous. I had a thought, but it'll probably come back
It's
later.
okay. Yeah.
So I saw an Instagram post and it said something about your dark side. You used to have a dark side. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, my dark side. I still have my dark side. I
What is
still,
your dark side?
I think my dark side is someone who is, who has sort of like the control, the need to control, and the need also to, I think it's very it's subjective, right? Because to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
it's like my dark side is someone that can be very controlling, manipulative,
Mhm.
tries to be very seductive, and just can have a level of wanting. It's sort of like I've always been the person, like my dark side would be someone that if I want to harm or like harm someone by their words because I've experienced harm, I'm the type of person that will know exactly what to tell someone to break their heart. Like it's like because it's like I have this way of really observing someone and just observing that person and like from their conversations, from everything, da, 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 and I can gather the data points where if I feel that person disrespected me, I know exactly what to tell that person that's really, really going to trigger that.
You
So,
collect the ammo? You collect the ammo?
can you imagine that? Like, can you imagine that? So, I would say that at that point, I was very like, what's the word when someone does something to you and you're vindictive or
Vengeful?
Yes, yes, I was very like that. And I still have sometimes where that comes out. And I have also like obviously growing up with guys, I can have a lot of like anger because like I grew up with a bunch of guys and they're always
Competitive.
angry. Yeah, I'm very competitive sometimes too. So I would say really like then again, like then again, what is there's so much good and bad things about what I just mentioned, there's cons and there's pros. So when you the reason as to why you're asking this question, what is it that you want from the question?
No, that's a good question because I do think that dark can be subjective, because so for example, I don't really consider vengeful evil. Like if somebody attacked my mother, I would punch him in the face, like is that revenge? Sure. Is that evil? I wouldn't say so. So that's why I kind of want to tunnel down on this because I don't really consider revenge evil. I consider it high risk. Like if you're revengeful, something they might react in such a way that not only hurts you, but it also hurts your friends and family. Speaking from personal experience, so I consider it very high risk, but I don't know if I would describe revenge as
Hmm.
evil. Um, but and you said you can be controlling, and I guess that might be a form of evil if it goes too far. So have you gotten better at that? Like have you gotten less controlling?
Yeah, yeah, I realized that the reason why I was so self like controlling and trying to control everything was because I was someone that was afraid of not having control.
Yeah.
And so now I've learned the power of just letting go. And when I do that, when I finally just surrender, there's so much power that comes with it. Like so I've learned to see both sides of the spectrum. So just reprogramming my mind continuously will help me.
There's power in saying there's nothing I can do about that. Because it sounds to me like before you kind of
Yeah.
had this like I have to do something about that. I have to change that mentality. Whereas now you're more like, you know, that's out of my control and there's nothing I can do. And there's peace in that, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah. And also like learning how when people come into your life, don't try to control them. Like people are going to come into your life and they're going to want to be, it's really like, I feel like you have to give people the freedom that you would want others to give to you. And so back then, I realized that, like I said, I was trying so hard to control because I was actually afraid. It was those abandonment wounds of like someone will abandon me or like I feel abandoned or it's just that. And, as a little kid, if, you experience this, especially when I was 16, my mom leaving, that not having control of that was something that made me become so controlling because I realized like, oh wow, this just happened to me. Someone that I really love and I care about just decides to leave and I cannot do anything to try to get that person to stay here with me. So I think that was also one of the reasons why my relationship dynamics were highly affected by that, by my abandonment.
So it sounds to me like you had a very large fear of abandonment before.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm willing to bet that it's probably still somewhat there a little bit.
Oh yes, of course, of course. And so when the abandonment, the feelings of abandonment come to me, I do the technique where I imagine myself as a little girl,
Hmm.
and I imagine like little Z, and I imagine little C, and I give little Z the opportunity to feel the way she feels, right? Because you mentioned like how you stoicism is about like thoughts and emotions. But
Uh-huh.
I've also learned that there's power in integrating the emotions. Like there's power in like allowing myself to feel the emotion. Actually, I think Dr. Hawkins, I don't know, he's like a writer. He talks about like allowing yourself to process your emotions because if you don't process your emotions, you actually begin to suppress them. So, and when the abandonment wound comes up, I allow little Z to experience those abandonment wounds. If she feels angry, if she feels sad, I let her be sad and then I comfort her. I give her the hug and I do that. And so me imagining that in my brain allows me now to, when I feel that way, not like, why is this coming up again? No, because it's gonna, it's life. You're gonna, how like they say, like the point is to not feel that way. Dude, we're gonna feel this way forever. Like we're in a human experience. Your emotions are gonna come up. So it's just how you handle them, how you process them.
It sounds to me like you're really, really, really good at coming up with coping techniques and just coping in general. I've never heard that, you imagine yourself as a little girl and then you comfort her. Like you have that visual in your head, don't you?
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
I've never, it sounds to me like you're really brilliant when it comes to like coping mechanisms, which really comes in handy, because like you said, life is full of challenges and obstacles and depression and anxiety, and it sounds to me like, you've never, as far as you've never seen a therapist, and you're really good at being your own therapist.
I'm open to it for sure. I'm open to it. But at the time, right now I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I don't feel the need to right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you found one, I'm not gonna brush them off and say that they can't help, but it's hard because and I actually kind of feel the same way, and the reason why is because when you're already like so self-reflective and when you're already like constantly asking yourself the right questions and coming up with the right coping mechanism,
Mhm.
then it's like you feel less motivation to see a therapist because you're kind of your own therapist in a way. And I'm not trying to judge anyone who goes to therapy, but I'm in the same boat. Whereas like I don't feel the need for it, because I do consider myself a pretty good therapist to myself. So
What made you be this way? Like what made you be someone that is very self-reflective and you're very quick at like finding the answers as to why you feel this way or why you think this way?
I think that I've always been good at like putting my ego aside when thinking, and always been pretty stoic. And I watched this psychiatrist on YouTube named Dr. K. I don't know if you've seen him, but I found him like about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, and he really, really made me fall in love with psychology and like studying other people. And he talks a lot about like mental illnesses, and he really made me fall in love with psychology. And on top of that, like I've always been a strong believer in just self-awareness and metacognition and cognitive reframing and all that, and I think psychology should be mandatory. This My philosophy is it should be mandatory from like sixth grade all the way to 12th
I
grade.
agree.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I agree with what you say because I also believe that, like, I believe, like, why didn't the school system have these classes? Why didn't the school system have like classes of meditation too? Like, why aren't we training our children to learn how to meditate the mind? Can you imagine just putting meditation? Because meditation is difficult, right? Imagine training them when their brains are super flexible and then also introducing them to psychology and self-esteem. Can you imagine how our world would shift?
It would
Like
shift greatly, greatly. The crime would lower and people would be happier and people would be more inner peace. And you also
relationship.
have you also have to remember that back in the day, let's just say even like 30 years ago, the world was not even half as psychologically aware as we are today. Like for example, I I didn't hear the word boundaries until like 2 years ago. I didn't hear the word boundaries growing up as a kid. I never heard that word, and like there are so many new words like I never really heard the word narcissism when I was a kid, or I never really heard like I don't know, like I was never really taught about the ego. So the world is a lot more psychologically aware. And like for example, when I was a kid, I never heard about like processing emotions. I never heard of these phrases. So the world is a lot more psychologically aware than it used to be, which is great.
Yeah, actually, I had met someone a couple of weeks ago who told me that back then, like because they didn't have like cell phones or computers, her way of learning about psychology was going to the library and grabbing a book. But that's why I've also learned like our parents and their parents only taught what they knew. Like they didn't have access to this,
Mhm.
right? Like they didn't have the ability to, yeah, they didn't have the ability to say like where is this feeling coming from? Let me just Google it. Like our parents didn't have any of that. Like
Let me
now,
YouTube it.
yeah, like we have this information in our hands. Like it's incredible. It's really incredible.
And now we have ChatGPT, which I also use a lot. I use
Uh,
ChatGPT every day.
I love ChatGPT. I love
It's so good. It's
ChatGPT.
so good for like for everything, and I'll ask it the most random questions too. I'll be like, do jellyfish
What,
have emotions?
oh yeah, do they?
Like not really. No, not really.
Dolphins though. Dolphins do though.
No, most animals do, but jellyfish are like, they're very simple. Like they don't really have like a whole like, a whole nervous system and all that. Or I don't know what you call it, but most mammals do have emotions, but they're a lot more simple and less complex. But I'll use it for the most random questions.
Yeah, yeah.
And I use it for a lot of psychological questions too. So I did want to get to my next point. So you also made a video titled "Curiosity Changed My Life."
Hmm.
You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, well, going back to why I believe that curiosity is my superpower, we hear knowledge is power, right? We hear that quote, knowledge is power. But I believe that curiosity is power because if you are someone who is not curious to want to explore, to learn, then how do you open the access to knowledge? How do you access knowledge without curiosity? So going back to how you mentioned like you're a person who practices cognitive reframing and metacognition, I'm also a person who's very curious, and I think that me practicing curiosity within myself has opened and so much just internal space for myself to explore myself, and that to me is a gift because if I was not curious then I wouldn't actually be here talking to you with so much clarity and confidence, because I practice curiosity in every, like, on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, one thing I was going to say before is that, when it comes to curiosity, there are a lot of people who are very curious and very like solution based as far as the external world, but they never really look within, and there's so many
Mm,
people, like, for example, let's just say, th-
that's
uh,
beautiful.
let's just say that someone what is a good example? Someone spills coffee on you, or maybe something even less, like someone steps in your shoes, right? There are a lot of people, okay, what do I do? How do I deal with this person? How do I clean my shoes? How do I fix my shoes? And they don't analyze, what am I feeling? Why am I angry? They only analyze the external world and not the internal world. And I think that's the difference between, like, us and a lot of other people, is that we spend a lot of time analyzing our what's going on in here, not just the external solutions and the external problems of what's going on.
I agree with what you said, and I'm glad you brought that up because I do believe that curiosity, when you practice curiosity for internal purposes, you also are like the domino. You know, have you ever heard of the domino effect where
Of
like one
course, yeah,
domino
yeah,
falls? So
yeah.
I feel us, people like us, when we reflect internally, we end up being the domino effect to the entire like space or the people around us because we learn the power of now, okay, this happens, right? So I'm going to break the chain. The interaction is not going to go this way. I'm choosing to the interaction to go the other way. So even though we think we're not causing a master change in the outside and we think it's only the inside, you are causing a change externally as well because you're not that angry person saying, "Why'd you step on my shoes?" You're choosing to be more reflective about it. So now you're one person less angry from the millions of people, billions of people that are here.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson talks about this. He was saying, like, what you do will affect, let's say, 20 people, but also what they do will affect 20 people, but also what they do will affect 20 people. So I think that our rippling effect and our domino effect is much, much, much stronger than people realize. I mean, we're literally all connected. Like what we do will literally affect people in Africa and Australia, because that's how it works. And especially with the internet now, it's it's
Absolutely.
it's way the domino effect and the rippling effect is way stronger than people realize. Um, you also did a video on detachment.
Mhm.
So my first question is, what is something that you had to detach from?
The wanting to be loved.
Hmm. But that want is still there, though. I mean, don't we all want to be loved?
To me, to me, it depends. Like, I think it's very subjective, right? Because wanting to be loved in that situation of like, do I want someone to come into my life to come and save me, or come and, love me this way, or love me this way, or like I need a partner or someone to come this way. The desire of the realization of me not realization of knowing that love is already within has allowed me to detach myself from that desire, because we're really just seeking the feeling. Like, wanting to be loved is so vague. Like, what is wanting to be loved? It's a feeling, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That person that comes into your life is giving you a feeling. You're searching for a feeling, you're desiring a feeling. So when that really was something that I had to accept, that I'm like, okay, yes, I want to be loved, but what is wanting to be loved? What is that? And so that desire of that feeling, instead of now desiring it, it's like, that feeling, I can practice that feeling right now. Like, I can practice the embodiment of love. And by doing that, I no longer feel the necessity of wanting to be loved, because I'm just searching, I'm just wanting that feeling. But that feeling can be embodying right now, whether that's me writing and being so in love with this moment of me writing, or just waking up and seeing, like listening to little birds, or like embodying that love within myself, has now allowed me to detach from wanting to be loved, because it's just a feeling.
Yeah. I'm wondering like how how happy can you be if nobody loves you? Like it is because I've always looked at external love as a need, a psychological need. And I'm wondering like how happy can you be? Because you sound like you love yourself and you've learned to love yourself over the years. And it also begs the question like, you know, is because isn't there a part of you that still needs to be loved? And how happy can you be if you don't get it?
So the thing is, I feel like we convince ourselves that, we're going to be happy when someone comes in.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, happiness is just temporarily too. Like, it's not just something that, like, when you finally attract, let's say, someone, right, a partner,
Hmm.
you really think that that person is always going to be lovey-dovey and showing you love, and being giving you all the happy emotions?
Life is not a Disney movie.
So here's the thing. This is one thing I tell myself, Christian. If I'm not happy and content right now, when I do have something, am I going to be happy and content forever? No. So, like, learning to also accept that a relationship is not just lovey-dovey. Like, a relationship can also be, and I think that now I've come into this awareness of like, I decide when I want to be in a relationship. I decide when and with who I want to be in a relationship with, instead of like, I need, like, this person's coming in for me and I just need the love for this person. It's not desperation anymore. Instead, it's more like, am I ready to go down the rabbit hole of expansion and connection? Because relationships um, are not transactional, they're transformation. The relationship that you are in with someone is not transactional, it's literally transformation. And you are going to, I see this way, when you finally, it's easy to be alone. When you finally with someone, that person is going to trigger the things that you've been like, they're gonna also trigger the worst in you too, like your if your
Insecurities.
flaws, because they're never gonna leave. So when that person comes in, like, and that person, the lovey-dovey does not there anymore, how are you gonna react to that? So people are just end up like, I can't do this anymore, I'm done, right? So that's why I bring it back to the present moment. Like, we're all gonna die, we came here alone, we're gonna die alone, That's just how it is. Human connection is vital. I'm not saying do not like I have right now, I feel so enjoyable talking to you. We're having like this great like this interaction, right? So
Mhm.
human connection is vital. But because I am so in love with myself and I'm so present with myself, I'm able to enjoy this interaction even more. And
Mhm.
I'm not searching for something. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So I noticed that you focus specifically on romantic love, right? But what about like love, like because I would imagine you have a group of girlfriends.
A group of all types of people. Yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. Uh, all types of people that are in my life that I'm very blessed with. And I mean, they are supportive friends, and they're all love. They support me, and they love me, and it's a vice versa. So I think being around the right people is also, has helped me. So what is exactly like? Are you saying like they're not like? What is your question?
I guess my question is like, well, okay, so to get a little bit more specific, uh, do you like okay, so my friends mean a lot to me. I've had the same friends since middle school, over 20 years, some of them. So my friends mean a lot to me. So I guess the question is, do you feel the need for for friends and for friends to love you, or or are you kind of like, or do you view that more of as like a bonus?
No, I mean, I believe human connection is vital to human development. Like you need to
Mhm.
connect with humans, and you need to experience and learn from different humans. And we're programmed to be around people. We're programmed to need to have people around us. Like evolution has taught us that. So no, I believe I'm very, very big on human connection because like when you sit down with someone, that person will open an entire reality that you didn't think so. And so I would be lying to say that I don't crave that. Like that to me is something I desire and I crave. And it's just I'm very selective with who I allow in my energetic space.
Yeah, being socially selective. I think that so one thing I learned in life is that once you find like that group, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, once you find like your circle, like from that point, stick with them and also be super, super picky from that point because now it's like you already found your circle. So now you have the luxury to be picky because you're not like, someone who's as alone as you used to be. So I think that statistically the marriage rate has really really plummeted. It's plummeted a lot, and like dating now is like, especially probably in Miami, like it's like dating is like so messy, and like it's the dating world and the marriage world isn't what it used to be. Having kids really plummeted, and the way that I look at it is marriage isn't a need, but it's a bonus. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it. Like I think that it's really important to love yourself and to view a husband or wife as more of a bonus than an actual need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I ask you, since you mentioned that you are someone also that has had friends, right, that for so many long, I'm
Mhm.
sure that, sometimes what happens is that I heard someone tell me that usually our friends that we've known for very long are a representation of our old self too, like because they have seen you grown up for so long. So like you're sort of attached to them even more because you're attached to your old self because you the Christian now is completely different from the Christian that was with these friends, right? But
Mhm.
there's a feeling of your subconscious still being attached to your old self. And that's actually something I talked to one of my closest friends is sometimes people like as you start getting older and you start developing yourself and improving yourself, you feel like you can't relate to a lot of your friends that you've been with or you've known forever. And part of you feels guilty for feeling that way because you're like, oh man, like I've known this person for so long, but like I don't feel like we relate that much about specific things anymore. So like how do I like should I continue being with this person as a friend? Should I not? And that guiltiness of like still wanting to be around them, it's sort of like a reflection of you still being attached to your old self.
Yeah, so you're saying like sometimes what friends grow apart. I think that's what you're
Yeah.
saying. And then
Yeah.
sometimes people stay in the friendship because they feel too guilty to walk away, here's one thing I noticed about the world. The world is a lot faster to walk away from people than it used to be. So for example, like growing up,
Hmm,
friends tended to stay together longer. Relationships, people tended to stick together longer. And marriages, like the divorce rate went up a lot. And growing up, I remember like a lot of people would have the mentality of family first, always stick with family, always stick with family, always stick with family. And now I started to realize that a lot of people have the mentality of even if they're family, if they're toxic, you got to walk away.
that's
You know,
true.
and a lot of people have that mentality now way more than they used to. And, I'm really glad that you stuck it out with your mother. But unfortunately, there are other scenarios, where the person should walk away because sometimes it's just too much, it's too draining to be around certain people. And, in your case, things ended up well, your mom got a lot better, you got a lot better, but there are other scenarios where nobody gets better and where the person just stays narcissistic or egotistical. And there are a lot of other scenarios where people should walk away, I would say.
Yes, yes. So what are your thoughts in regards to the fact that like how you mentioned a lot of like marriages and friendships and collapse? How have you learned like are you okay with that?
No, that's a great question. There are some people who walk away too fast, but I think that overall, I I think that walking away is generally a good thing. And there are some special cases, but there's some people who are just so toxic that you kind of just, if you stay, it disrupts your inner peace. And the thing is, like, you cannot expect people to change. You cannot wait for people to change. You cannot try to change someone. It doesn't work, like we talked about before. And there are some situations where, like your situation, it sounds like things went really well with the sticking around. But I think that generally speaking, I'm happy with the fact that people walk away more because, yeah, even though the divorce rates still go up, there were so many people in abusive marriages before, even just emotionally abusive. So I don't know. I'm kind of, I kind of feel like it's a good thing that people walk away more, in my
Mm,
opinion.
mm, mm.
What is your opinion?
I think so. I think I agree. I feel like there's definitely like if you're in a situation where you feel like you just cannot do it, then walk away, of course. Like yeah, you can't be in a toxic relationship. My other question here would be more like what is happening that why is this happening so much? Like, what is the triggering point as to why people are entering relationships and ending relationships very quickly? That why and like understanding why is that happening? And obviously, with so much external factors now, we have the internet, we have social media, we have so many things. And like it's like back then, I honestly feel like sometimes Christian, it's an overstimulation to the mind too when we have too much options
Of
because
course.
when you had to go to like weren't you the happiest when you went to an ice cream shop and there was only three flavors, strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna get whatever flavor I want. Now you go to an ice cream shop and you have like 20 different flavors. You're there for 40 minutes and it's like an overstimulation of like pure anxiety of which one should I choose or like which one. And I think that that's the world we're living in right now too. And so like I've also been very fascinated with exploring that and like how having all these options and all this information also affects us in the human connection.
Yeah. So a lot of information and people who people who are overthinkers, it's a really bad combination, like what, so because you do, maybe you come across as a little bit of an overthinker, as I am too. But whenever I go to like an ice cream shop or a restaurant, I intentionally go, okay, don't think too much, because
Mm,
if you think too much, you're screwed. Like now you're probably gonna end up with the same food, the same meal that you chose in the very beginning, and then there's anxiety and there's stress. So whenever I go to a restaurant, I look at like I think about what I want to eat maybe for 1.5 minute tops. After that, I'm done thinking because after that, it's like it's just too much thinking. And
I'm gonna do that. Thank you for bringing that tip to me, actually. Thank you. I'm going to start implementing that timing into my when I go to restaurants because I end up being the person who also like takes their time and it's like, no, why? So I'm gonna
yeah,
start.
go ahead, go ahead. I didn't want you to.
No, no, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, because it's just it's too much thinking, and like I said, like we usually don't even change our minds, but back to your question about like why, about like walking away and why people walk away more. You did bring up social media. Social media has a lot to do with it. I think social media gave a lot of people unrealistic expectations. A lot of people have a lot of options as far as dating goes. And I think that a lot of we all know about the like the 6'5" blue eyes and finance and all that. And the same thing with men. Like a lot of men have unrealistic expectations too. Social media gave us a lot more options and a lot more connections. That has a lot to do with it. And I even think that you know increase in psychological awareness I think plays a large role in walking away because, now we're aware about boundaries and now we're aware that hurt people. And now we're aware that, you have to avoid toxic people in order to be happy, in order to achieve inner peace. So I actually think that an increase in psychological awareness and metacognition has a lot to do with people walking away more as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you have 20 more minutes and then we can just wrap it up?
Yeah, I have 20 minutes. Yeah.
Perfect. Do you have any questions or did you have anything that we want to come down to or
I wrote down a few more questions. Yeah. So most of them are actually just titles of your YouTube videos. One of them is why losing them is the answer to finding yourself. Let's talk
yes.
about that. What was that referring to your
Yes,
mom?
yes. So, why losing them? Okay, so the title to that video was actually because after my mom, after the whole thing with my mom, I mentioned to you that I was for like, I would say 4 years after that was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, like 5 years. I
Uh-huh.
was living in victim mentality, right? I was very living in victim mentality. I have a lot of anger in me. I had a lot of frustration in me, resentment in me. And so what ended up happening was that I attracted someone that I was in a relationship for like a good amount of time. And this person, I don't have anything as far as like negative to say about this person because that person also was a triggering point as to why I decided to discover myself. But let's just say that it was a really bad relationship. It was a very emotionally abusive, not just from his end, but also from my end. And I take full responsibility for that because hurt people, like you said, hurt people, and I believe in taking responsibility, and part of being in a relationship dynamic is also to grow but also to see your dark and shadow self, in the relationship, because it will flourish and it will appear. And so I think that my when I decided to and my relationship with this person, because I was very codependent. I was very, very codependent with this person because of like the abandonment of being afraid to have him walk away. I would be the person that I was the partner that would come into the relationship, leave, come in, come out, come in, come out, come out. And that's just not right. That's not fair. And so if you're coming in and out of someone's life and then you expect that person to not leave you, I was just not mentally right. And so, me being in this relationship has now allowed me, after I decided to just decide, okay, you can't do this anymore. It's not healthy. I really, really went deep into like improving myself. And that's why I'm grateful for that relationship. So I cognitive reframed. I changed the way I was looking at the relationship. And I decided to see like this relationship actually ended up saving me.
Yeah, it sounds like you grew a lot from that relationship and that you kind of like always had one foot out the door. And a lot of people when they have abandonment issues, a lot of people have the mentality of they're gonna leave me, so in order to avoid that pain, I'm gonna leave them first. I'm gonna leave first.
Oh,
I'm gonna leave first because this way I won't be heartbroken. It's better for me to leave. It's less painful for me to leave than for them to leave. So I'm gonna have one foot out the door or just walk out because it's so much easier to leave them than to deal with the heartbreak of them leaving me.
I found myself doing that a lot. So thank you for bringing that up.
So do you think that I don't know what your status is now, but do you think that in your next relationship you're going to be a lot more committed?
100% because I'm committed to myself.
Mhm.
Like commitment begins when I always, this is why my channel it's Let's Talk Self, is because I believe in the self first, and then everything around you flourishes. So, yes, commitment begins when you commit to yourself. There are going to be moments I exercise is very big in my life. Like I have to exercise and work out. Me showing up for myself that 1 hour and committing to myself even when I don't feel like it is showing me commitment, is practicing commitment to myself. So there will be moments where I just don't feel like doing something. And I'm like, I have to do it. And it's like, at the end of the day, what is the bigger picture? Z is going to feel so much more better. Her mood is going to be better. She's going to be able to think better. And so, by committing to myself and making this commitment to myself, when I finally do attract this person, which I have, when I do attract this person, it's going to be easier for me to commit to this person because I've learned commitment begins with the self.
Yeah, commitment begins with I think that even confidence and self-love plays a role in commitment because if let's just say that you maybe have self-esteem issues, right? Now you're going to feel like, oh, they're going to find someone better, and that now that you're going to feel like you're easy to replace. So I think, yeah, I think I see what you're saying. Everything starts because the way that you view yourself will affect the way that you view other people and the way that you treat other people. And one of my favorite sayings is you can't pour from an empty cup, like I said before. And emotions are extremely, extremely contagious. So that's a really good point. Um, in one of your videos, you mentioned I don't know how to pronounce it. Vasopressin. How do you?
Vasopressin.
Yeah. What is
Vasopressin.
that? What is that?
Vasopressin is pretty much the neurotransmitter, which is like the chemical that comes up in the brain that brings men. Okay, so this was actually something that I found very interesting because when we hear, okay, let me ask you a question because you're into psychology. What is the one word that you hear when it comes to love? That's the neurotransmitter. It's
Oxytocin.
so oxytocin, right? So I was coming as like the feminine here and like learning about oxytocin. It's very big on the feminine body, the female body physiology.
Yeah.
Oxytocin is so it's what is mainly found. It's mainly found more in the female. We produce it more than men.
Yeah.
So my curiosity allowed me to say, okay, so if oxytocin is mainly produced by women, it's what allows women to, with their babies, become even closer. What is the male? Like, what is the male's neurotransmitter? And it's vasopressin. Actually, the way you guys determine a partner is so different from how we determine a partner.
Ooh, let's talk about this. Let's talk
Yeah,
about this.
yeah. So practically how that works is, which I found so fascinating. You guys need to be with someone that shows sort of like, I don't, so it was, this was found
Just
through
say it. Just say it.
brotherhood, right?
Uh-huh.
Brotherhood.
Uh-huh.
Like your boy has your back because your boy is there. And so like if you're facing a challenge with one of your friends, or like you're going through it with your guys, and like you produce that vasopressin more because your boy has your back. So actually soldiers in war bond better when they're surviving out, trying to like survive. They became bonding with the people that were there for them. Like, I'm going to protect you, and so we're going to protect each other. So vasopressin is building right there and there, and so that allows you to bond with, like, that's why soldiers bond so well together, because they're in that survival mode. They're bonding because they know that that person is going to be there. So how you can increase vasopressin with your partner is by like doing things for with your partner. Like I like, let's say you're trying to build like a table, right? You guys get this table. Don't let your partner, it's just because he's a man, he's the one that needs to build it. You can actually build the table with your partner. And even if it's like, hey, babe, like, let me help you grab the tools, like, let me help you read the manual. Like, let's interact together in this moment. A lot of times, there's like, just go do that. Just go do that. Take care of this. And what happens is that you're actually not increasing vasopressin because your partner is just doing things by himself. Whereas if you go in there and even though it's as simple as helping him read the manual, that closeness gives that signal to his brain where vasopressin begins because now he's doing something with you. Does that make sense?
So the word that comes to my mind is loyalty.
Loyalty, yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
vasopressin sounds somewhat synonymous to loyalty.
Correct, correct, correct. It's just showing that you are gonna be there, even when it's the roughest time, when your partner is going through something very difficult. Maybe he needs he's so overloaded with work. Just going in there and saying, "Hey, sweetheart, I see that you're so overloaded with this. How can I come into this picture? Like, how can I come in?" And how can I come in and help you? And like also like that to them it's like to men they read that as a
Heaven.
sign, right? Instead of like like the nagging. And it's like, so that's the problem, is that I feel like as women we need to educate ourselves on men's psychology to be able to approach our men with more compassion and see like, okay, how can I use this so that I can approach my man with like what is it that he needs. So this is so important. And I think that's something that also like we can learn from back in the day, traditional women, like, when their men would come in, they would be very loyal to these men no matter what. That's why you would always see these relationships where like, I don't know, they died together. Like that's how long they've been together. This commitment is there. So that I found very fascinating. And I just enjoy also understanding the male psychology.
But at the same time, I would also imagine that when a woman comes home from work, she would like a man to say, "Hey, just to let you know, I cooked for you." Like it doesn't it kind of go both ways?
It goes both ways, 100%. But we are driven more towards like the oxytocin, which is more like the super huggy, the touching, the
Physical
like
affection.
the physical affection. So we're very big on emotion, like we're very driven emotionally. So we tend to be very emotionally driven, like we want that emotional support. Whereas you men, you tend to see things completely differently in that aspect. You can give me a little bit more information because you're coming from a male perspective is completely different.
Yeah, so well, I do want to establish that, so you know about the five love languages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so physical affection is one of them. I think acts of service might be what you're referring to as far as vasopressin. I think acts of service might be similar, but everyone has their own love languages. I mean, obviously we all have all five, but some just more than others. You know, but I think there's a
Also,
tremendous what?
sorry. Also, when I mentioned vasopressin, it's not just something that um, you would do for your partner, but also in your intimacy. Like when you're intimate with your partner, a lot of times women want to please, 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 and we sabotage ourselves because men actually want to please as well. And so
Yeah.
what happens is that if you're doing all the pleasing, the person, you're not actually allowing him to produce vasopressin in his brain, so he's just going to see you more like, okay, she's just pleasing me. Men are driven to want to do and act. So like I feel like sometimes like the intimacy also plays a huge role, like allowing him to also please you and surrendering. So I just wanted to touch on that.
No, no, that's a really good point. Men, when we really, really love a woman, we love pleasing, not just pleasing her, but we love healing her. When men really love women, we love making them feel safe and making them feel provided for, and we love helping them heal. And if you're just pleasing us, then now we're not getting that feeling of healing. So, it's really important not just to help other people, but to let them help you. That's really
Mhm.
important because letting them help you is therapeutic to them in its own way. But back to the five love languages. You know, I really wonder like how much gender plays a role because there
Mhm.
are some men who love physical affection and there are some women who love acts of service. So I'm really wondering in my head like how much gender plays a role, because I'm sure that it does to a large extent. Like women probably love cuddling more, for example. But I really wonder like because you wanted a man's perspective, but I'm wondering the the difference between like a woman's love language and a male's love language. Like I think that there's a lot of overlap, isn't there?
I agree. I feel like it can be kind of biased because like it really depends. Like, what I remember someone asked me, what are your love languages? And I'm like, it's such a hard question to ask. I feel like I would say all of them probably,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
like, so it's like, so, I don't know. And then you mentioned something like, how much are they actually considering gender and like what happens in each brain, like in each person's individual brain. So I think there can be some sort of bias to the love languages. I think it can be very, very subjective.
Yeah. Well, so before we wrap this up, I do have a question. So, you admitted before that you had some control issues before, right? So,
Hmm.
is there a part of you that wants a man that's submissive?
No, no,
No.
no. So for sure, I want someone that can tap me in the back and say, no, 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 no. I let you become submissive and let me play like what's it called? Let me play if I'm the submissive one, he's the dominant one, right?
Dominant, yeah, yeah.
Yes, no, I for sure have realized that in order for me to really be in a relationship that's transformative to my psychology and my well-being, I have accepted that I need a man who's dominant and I need to play my role as a submissive woman.
That's interesting because you wouldn't expect to hear that from a woman who admits that she's controlling, but that's you tapping into your feminine energy, so that's really interesting. And as someone, so like I said, I consider you very psychologically aware, and it's interesting because your next man, whoever it is, he probably won't be as psychologically as aware as you. And I'm gonna take a guess and say that it's going to be your job, or I don't know if I want to use the word job, but it's going to be you trying to explain to him things about himself that he doesn't necessarily know.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm a big believer in you are what you attract.
Yeah.
So I'm a big, big believer in you are what you attract. And I believe that if you are someone and the reason why I say is because I've attracted a lot of people. I mean, just me talking to you, we
Mhm.
relate to so much similarities, right? Like there's just so much similarities in talking to you. And I believe that I've attracted also this experience and also you're sort of reflecting everything that I teach. So I don't like to lock myself as to say like I'm gonna attract this type of person. No, I'm so opened and I believe highly and highly that if you're someone who is being and embodying your highest version, you will attract the same thing
Yeah.
and you will learn. Obviously there's going to be differences in that person and that person's going to come in and that person's going to huge differences, okay, because that person is coming here to serve sort of a purpose also. So when I do have the intention to be be submissive and allow my men to be dominant because my intention is that I want to this relationship to come and transform me into another level that I just was not aware of, awaken something within me that I was just not aware of. That is my intention. Um, when I do find a partner, is I want the transformation that will come from the dynamic.
So what I would say is that you need a partner not only who is dominant, but who is psychologically aware, because you're a very, very psychologically aware person. And I think that you need a man who can keep up with you, because you don't want a man who you have to explain what the way he thinks and his metacognition. So I think that for you, you really, really need a man who is psychologically aware. And but before I let you go, I do want to let you know that, I am very proud of you. You've come a long way, and even though I barely know you, like it sounds like you used to be a lot less aware and less, self-reflective, and it sounds like you've really grown over the years, and you did it on your own. You did it without, anyone holding your hand, and without a therapist, without a psychiatrist, without a psychologist. And I just want to let you know before I let you go that I'm really, really proud of you for healing and coming a long way by yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing those kind words to me, and also thank you for giving me the time. I know we get so wrapped up in time and stuff, but I really do appreciate your time, and thank you for asking the right questions, and also like taking the time to look at my at research about me and stuff like that, because I feel like that shows that you are in this journey of really, really making it about like the information of what's coming out to help others. So I don't like just continue doing what you're doing. Maybe I have to tell you to like continue doing what you're doing, because and don't change the way you are doing things. Persistence, and also the how important, like how much you actually make time. You what's
Talk.
you prioritize someone's time, and you prioritize your time, and that will be reflective back to you.
Yeah, I like to believe that we give what we get, and I am a strong believer in karma. But listen, we're gonna save that for a part two. We are gonna have a part two next year sometime. I don't know when, but we're gonna have one. So it was so great talking to you, Z.
Bye. Take
Take
care.
Have a good day. Take care.